The problem of evil looks at first glance like a theological problem, and that's how it was formulated at a time when everybody was a theist, essentially. So the question of how we could find meaning or how we could live with horrible evil and suffering was in the first instance a question about how God could permit it to happen. How could a good God permit a world in which children die and earthquakes happen and plagues come, and it looks as if innocent people get knocked out, and often horrible people prosper. Traditional Christians can, even though they have a framework which ought to answer the problem of evil, often stumble on the question, so why, if God knows everything and is perfectly benevolent, why did he create human beings so as to sin at all? The traditional answer was given by St. Augustine, who said, well, God loved human beings so much that he wanted to make them free and dignified, and in order to be free, you have to be really free, and to be really free, you also have to be able to make wrong choices. So this was actually a gift that God gave us to make us in his image, to make us completely autonomous and able to choose, and we blew it. The French philosopher Pierre Bayle had a wonderful analogy, which I think, frankly, rips up that answer. He compares God on this metaphor to being like a mother who allows her daughters to go to a ball knowing that they'll lose their virginity there. And of course, in those days, in the 18th, 17th century, this was, if a girl lost her virginity, she was an outcast, her life was over, nobody would marry her, she had no other options. It's almost a fate worse than death, or for some people, I suppose, a fate worse than death. And Bayle says, well, the mother could say she told her daughters to be careful, and nevertheless, a woman who lets them go to the ball knowing that they'll lose their virginity there loves neither her daughters nor chastity. And I just think it's a brilliant answer to what Augustine called the free will defense of God. And it leaves Christianity with a huge set of questions to answer. Theodicy is a word that was invented by Leibniz, and it meant justifying God. Justifying God, like a lawyer would justify somebody who'd been accused of a crime. And in fact, Pierre Bayle had accused God of a crime, if you will. He had accused God of being responsible for the crimes and misfortunes that make up human history. What you have to understand is that Leibniz makes sense if you start from a classical conception of God, right? If you say that God is omnipotent and God is benevolent, right? God can do anything, he can know everything, then this has to be the best of all possible worlds. And whatever looks to the contrary has got to be the result of our misunderstanding. Right? So it follows from a combination of orthodox religion and logic. Leibniz's whole system follows from that. And it's really quite clear. If you can look at it like this, the classical problem of evil is a way of trying to put together three propositions. God is omnipotent, God is benevolent, and evil exists. There's no way in the world to reconcile all three at once, okay? You've got to dump one of them, right? Either you can deny that evil exists, and in a certain sense, that's just what Leibniz did, okay? He says everything that looks like evil isn't really if we know about it, and he gives some very lame examples. He said, well, we wouldn't always want to eat sugar. Sometimes we'd like to eat salt. That's true, and he says, well, if you can't complain if it rains on your picnic or your film, because after all, it's providing a harvest somewhere else. Well, you couldn't see light if you don't have shadow. All of those are great examples of something, but they're not the examples that actually apply to the problem of evil. If you say to someone who's being tortured, or you say someone who's, experienced a horrible death of someone who shouldn't have died at that time, and you say, well, look, in balance, this was necessary for the best possible of all possible worlds, just like shadow is necessary for light.